The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Aloha, welcome to the Best in the World with Richard Parr. This is where I speak to athletes and sports stars who have reached the pinnacles of their careers. I want to know what makes them different to the average man or woman in the street, and perhaps we can use these insights for our own sporting ambitions or just our everyday lives. On this week's show, I speak to world champion team pursuit cyclist Andy Tennant of Great Britain. He's gearing up for the Rio 2016 Olympics as part of the Wiggins team led by Bradley Wiggins. It's a really interesting chat with Andy. It's quite a technical chat, probably the most we've had on the Best in the World up to this point. He really talks about positional sense inside the Velodrome. We get really deep into nutrition. In fact, we specifically talk about the team Wiggins nutritionist David Dunn, what he's brought to their team and how Andy can improve it as a cyclist because of the improvements in nutrition. It's something he's interested in, and I think you will be too. So it's a very fascinating chat with Andy on that. He also talks coffee. He's quite the coffee snob. That's what we started a discussion about. He mentions a few apps he uses to find the best coffee around the world, and specifically in London. So if you like your caffeine, definitely listen to the start of the interview. And speaking of apps, I just wanted to mention what a good job I felt Facebook had done during the Paris attacks. Obviously, this podcast is in the wake of that. I really like their marking safe application they've got as part of Facebook, just because it brings such relief to me and to many people to know that friends they have in that city are safe. I lived in Paris in 2005 while I worked for Eurosport, so I still have some friends there. I still have a great fondness for the city. I was there only a few years ago for a good friend of mine's wedding, and I love the city. So for that to happen and for people to almost fear that they can leave their homes is devastating for me. But I'm sure they will rally around. And again, I think that's one of the positives of social media, that people do rally around Paris, and I think that is ultimately a good thing, and hopefully the city and the world can move on and hopefully for the better. Anyway, we'll move on from that. We're going to be talking to Andy Tennant in just a moment. As I mentioned, he works with Bradley Wiggins in the Wiggins team. And if you want to know more about cycling or even Bradley Wiggins himself, a really good way to do that is by listening to an audiobook. Well, guess what? I'm feeling really generous today. How about I give you, the listener, the Best in the World podcast listener, a free 30-day trial with Audible. They have over 180,000 audio titles to choose from, and you can get the first 30 days free. One of them could be My Time with Bradley Wiggins. I haven't listened to it myself. It's on my list. I definitely want to download it. But if you want to do it, all you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/best, obviously for the Best in the World podcast. That's audibletrial.com/best. That helps you, that helps me. We all get smarter. That's what we're here to do on the Best in the World podcast. And we're going to do that right now with Andy Tennant.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Andy Tennant, welcome to the Best in the World with Richard Parr. I just want to read through your Twitter bio. It says, World and European champion track cyclist, Olympian, official Wiggins rider, Commonwealth medalist, BHF ambassador, and coffee snob. Tell me about being a coffee snob. Have you been drinking it all day today?
No, I don't. I try and avoid too much coffee, to be honest. But yeah, I get grafted, shall we say, with the task of finding the coffee shop out. Otherwise, I'll pull my nose up. So I've got a few apps. It's easy in London when you're there, but there's another app called Bean Hunter, which sounds a lot. Doesn't sound particularly. When people hear when you say Bean Hunter, it sort of gets other people's minds racing. But it is an innocent app. It's not anything else. But yeah, so that's usually pretty good to help me sort of locate decent coffee shops around the UK. But yeah, like for example, I've travelled here in Tenerife with a V60. Normally I can't travel with an AeroPress, and I've got my own kettle, scales, grinder. It's a bit like a chemistry operation going on in my room. I think a bit like Breaking Bad. That's the sort of look I'm going for.
But all legal, right?
Yeah, all legal. Yeah. No narcotics here. And then at home I've got a coffee machine that's probably more expensive than quite a few coffee shops, shall we say. It's sort of an American thing. Not many people have heard of it. It's called a Slayer. It's pretty bespoke. It was the second one in the UK of single group, and I think there's about 4 or 5 big ones in the UK. There's not many. They're in very sort of special coffee shops. There's special sort of there's a couple in London. There's one in Edinburgh. I know that. That's where my sort of money gets spent, shall we say?
Oh, fantastic! So what's your standard order if you can't get the Slayer? What would you go into Starbucks and order, for example?
I'd avoid Starbucks.
Oh.
The only time I go to Costa and Starbucks is if I'm in an airport and I'm stuck. Otherwise, if you live in London, I personally would never visit any of them. You can buy an iPhone app called London's Best Coffee, and it'll probably be the best. I think it might be 70 pence now. It used to be free. It might be £1. I'm not sure, but that'll be the best £1 you ever spend. It'll locate some specialty coffee shops, and there's literally there's tons of them. You just don't realise, and you'll get a lot better brew from there than you will ever from Starbucks or anywhere like that. That's for certain.
Well, if you're not ambassador for them, perhaps you should be, because you've done a really good sales job for them just there.
Yeah.
So obviously, coffee is part of your life, and obviously nutrition as well. I see that David Dunn is the Wiggins nutritionist.
Yeah.
What has he done to amend your diet since you've joined the team there?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. Got a lot of respect for David Dunn. I spoke to him the other day actually. He's got different ideas. He's a sort of more modern take on a nutritionist from what we've had. We've been providing them through British Cycling, and British Cycling got new ones now, but I personally haven't worked with them much because I've sort of found I'm pretty happy with David Dunn. He sends me everything I need to, goes into as much detail as I want as such. I've got sort of A-levels in biology and chemistry, so my understanding of the human body and how it sort of is affected by food and exercise, etc., is relatively good. I was looking at doing sort of sports and exercise science at university, so I understand more than some people would do in that field, and other fields I definitely don't. So it just makes everything for me practical and simple. I think that's what you need as an athlete. When you've done 6 or 7 hours training, the last thing you want to do is a Jamie's 15-minute meals. I've done plenty of them, and they never take 15 minutes. That's for certain. And you just cause it looks like a tsunami's hit the kitchen as well. You've used every pot and pan, and you've used every blooming utensil in your cruising art food processor, and his recipes that he gives you, that they're nutritious, they're exactly what you need. But the biggest change for me is increased my protein intake. I probably was never eating enough protein before. I was surprised at how much we did actually need to use, and for years I've probably not eaten enough, and I'm eating sort of 2 to 2.5 grams per kilo. I'm 82 kilos, so I'm looking at around 200 grams of protein a day, which is quite a lot of protein. You're almost looking at products to getting enough food and calories, and to try and keep muscle mass on and maintain it, especially in the altitude where we are now. All we're doing is aerobic work, and it's very catabolic, so it destroys all your muscle mass that you've sort of built up doing the track and gym. So his best advice is, if I would say to anyone, follow him on Instagram and Twitter, because he does put some cracking little recipes up that are easy to follow and great for anyone to do, shall we say.
Yeah, I'll try and put that on the info sheet when I put this podcast out, give his details fine, as well. So how does your what you eat change between a training day and a race day? For example, what would you eat in the hours leading up to a big race?
Yeah, it's not particularly exciting, really. Our diet is pretty boring. When you're doing sort of road racing, it can be a bit more varied. Sort of if you're racing, say at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we'll do road racing. You'd probably get up at 9 o'clock and have a lightish breakfast, or you'd sort of skip it and just have something at 10 o'clock is probably my option, and stay in bed for a bit longer. And in that area, you sort of have, it's pretty boring. It's probably like a bowl of porridge and an omelette, and that's pretty much all you have. You try and avoid the donuts and the muffins and the croissants and all that sort of jazzle that's on the buffet plate.
Is that difficult to do?
It's not too hard when it's just a one-day race, but when you're the seventh day into like a cycling tour, they appeal a lot more, I can tell you now. And you do have them, don't get me wrong, but quite often they look a lot better than they taste, especially abroad. But we're sort of self-sufficient, and lots of stuff gets brought. So along with the team, sort of different mueslis and that type of stuff that have been bought in specially. And so we try and avoid the buffets a bit. And then before track racing, like before team pursuits, we'll eat 3 hours before, and we basically just have rice and chicken or rice and eggs. It's pretty boring, but to be honest, it's the easiest on your stomach.
Is the carb intake high? Do you take a lot of carbs? I know you say you're having more protein now.
Yeah, not masses on the track, more so on the road. You can carbo load up for if it's a one-day race and stuff, but in a multi-stage race, after sort of a race, you're sort of fueling again, but you're eating on the bike then, so you've got 5 or 6 hours, so you're continually eating all the time. So it's, rather than having one massive meal, you just continually sort of grazing all day. After a race, you'll sort of have a protein shake that he's made up, and then you'll have some sort of a food that he's designed. So, like for example, at Tour of Britain, we were having sort of chicken that he'd marinated with rice noodles, because rice noodles are easier to digest than sort of pasta and that sort of stuff. So rice has become the stable diet of cyclists now. Used to be pasta, but now it's sort of rice.
Brown rice more than white?
No, white rice after a race, because it's a higher glycemic index, so the carbs are absorbed more readily. But then obviously at night you'll be eating, so your main meal at night, you sort of have a higher protein content, and you sort of have, the more sort of complex carbs, sort of your brown rices, quinoas, that sort of stuff. And yeah, so it is tailored throughout the day for what you have, but it is pretty simple on races. So when you're off races, there's nothing beats a good curry, that's for certain.
And does alcohol get in your diet at all? Are you teetotal, or is it only when you're not training? Or
No, I sort of seldom drink. I'm not a massive drinker anyway, so that, to be honest, that works well in my favour. I have the odd beer when I go out, sort of like if we've done a race and me and the missus or me and the lads go out for a curry or food or whatever, I'll have a beer, and I can either leave it. It's either it stops at one beer or it goes into, it's a big night out. I don't sort of have that. I don't just have 2 or 3. So I always drive. So it's usually, 1 or half, and that sort of stops me, which is the easy option. But yeah, we sort of schedule in big nights out around sort of after competitions and that sort of thing. So you have a release, shall we say. So I drink throughout the year, but it doesn't figure too highly in my diet. I'm quite lucky that I'm not too bothered. I sort of like beer and I like gin and lemonade. They're my 2 little weaknesses. So yeah.
So you're in Tenerife right now. I think I was told you're in Colombia a few weeks ago. How do you adapt to moving to different locations? How easy do you find it to go from one place to another?
I just live out a suitcase all year, to be honest. So my partner lives in a house that we own in sort of Shropshire, and I live in Wilmslow, and we sort of travel around. And up until the Olympics, it sort of figures that way, to be honest. She's better off down there with her friends and family and that sort of stuff. And we just sort of move around, and she's got the dogs with her and stuff. And obviously going from Cali and stuff's always difficult for everyone with jet lag and that type of thing.
Do you have a routine for the jet lag or on how to get over it?
No, not really. Struggled a bit for the first couple of days after Colombia. It's always worse going west. Back home is always worse, and it's because also we're only there for sort of 4 or 5 days, so you're just getting used to it, and then you totally you do the opposite and you go back to normal again. So you feel dreadful. And then other than that, like Europe's obviously it's only a short hop on a plane. But to be honest, hotel rooms feel more like home than this place. I've been here. I think I spent 2 weeks here in January, 3 or 4 weeks here in March, and then we spent another sort of 6 weeks in Livigno. So yeah, pretty much most of the time I'm in hotels, to be honest. I don't really spend that much time at my own home. Sometimes I wonder why I've got a home.
Do you become more of a hotel snob as well? The fact you go to different ones if they're not up to scratch on what you need?
No, we stay in some absolutely diabolical hotels, I can assure you, on bike races. When we're with GB and stuff, it's always, over a good standard and when they're put on. But in bike races, you get put in, it's quite often sort of Formula Ones and that type of thing in France. And there's 3 or 4 of you in a room and you're all on top of each other. And it's cozy, shall we say.
Who's the worst to room with?
Dibbo, if he snores, he's bad when he snores. Otherwise, he's great, but he snores, so that's a bit annoying. But I wouldn't say there's anyone. I don't dread rooming with anyone, to be honest. I like sharing with Ed Clancy the best. I share with him quite a lot. He's probably one of my best mates, so it's quite like sharing with him. But yeah, I don't dread staying with anyone. It's probably more awkward with Brad because he's more quiet than everyone else, and obviously all of us lads are a lot closer in age and all about as stupid as each other, whereas he's a bit more sensible. So sometimes it's a bit more. It's not awkward, but it's just a bit more. I don't know. You almost feel a bit like you should behave yourself around him. That's probably the best way of putting it. And sometimes you think what you'd probably do in front of Ed and the other lads, you think, well, I probably shouldn't do that. So yeah. Don't dread by any chance. It's great being room with him because there's many benefits, but at the same time, you sort of have to act a bit more responsibly, shall we say, which I don't like doing too much.
So being in Team Wiggins with Bradley Wiggins, what in particular have you learnt from him since joining the team?
People ask me this. It's difficult, not so much from Team Pursuiting, because obviously I've Team Pursuited for many years now, and I've probably learned as much as he knows, and we're almost telling him things that we've learned in the last couple of years that he didn't do when he was Team Pursuiting, and that we've changed. And but on the road,
what was that? What is that
in Team Pursuiting?
Yeah.
Just different lines on the track, and how we've when he raced, for example, back in 2008, they did a different finish than we do now. Sort of man 1, so the first person in the line moved up. Man 2 tried to go over man 1, and man 3 came underneath, which wasn't a particularly fast way of doing it. Whereas now, man 1 just goes up as high, not as high as he can, but high enough to allow man 2 and 3 to come under him. So just subtle changes that people probably wouldn't notice unless they've Team Pursuited a lot, or if I showed you 2 videos next to each other, you'd see the difference, but otherwise you wouldn't. But on the road. The one thing that we do get in Wiggins is a lot more respect in the peloton. It's fantastic, especially in sort of Tour of Britain and stuff. When you're in a national jersey or a continental level team, sort of like, for example, the other years with Madison Genesis, the pros don't really respect you, which is understandable. If I was in a smaller level race, you're not sure at what standard those bike riders are, and that's just a given. And there's such a variance in level at the continental level between the best and the worst in sort of bike handling skills and sort of performance, that it is difficult for them to respect you. But once you've got a Wiggins jersey on, they know who we are. They know that Brad's picked us, and we are the sort of the GB track team, and that we can handle our bikes. And you just get that little bit more room, and it's surprising how much that helps and how much energy that saves. And that helped us sort of propel Owen Dool up to 3rd overall and all those bunch kicks. And it would have been a lot more difficult if we'd been sort of in the GB national jersey, or if we'd been riding for a sort of a smaller British team. So that's not really something he's particularly helped me with, but I suppose he has in a way, because it's his name on the jersey, and it's the titles he's won and the respect he's gained that's sort of given us all that platform. And I can't think of one outstanding comment, but I'm sure there's tons of things he's taught me. Yeah.
So what are the goals for the team right now, and you personally?
Obviously, all our focus really is on the Olympics, that Team Pursuit medal. Team Wiggins, obviously, we've got quite a few big races next year. I think we're doing Tour of California, Tour of Britain's on the cards. So that programme's getting mapped out over the next coming month. We've got a much bigger team. I think there's 20 riders next year, which should be good. There's some fantastic riders in there. You've got the likes of Scott Davis, who's on the academy. He's probably one of the brightest young hopes for Britain, I'd say, on road racing scene. And he's sort of joined now, moved across from the British Cycling Academy. And there's, some of my old teammates from the tracks, Sam Harrison, he's there, and obviously all the existing riders, not forgetting Bradley himself. So I think we've got some good chances, some fantastic results next year. And I know they've got an under-23 focus, and they're doing some big under-23 races like Liège and Paris-Roubaix and stuff, which I think is getting some of the younger lads really excited.
On a personal note, are you normally a goal-setting person? Are you someone who says, I'm going to try and do this and I'll do anything to achieve it? Or are you a kind of person who's got a loose idea and kind of goes with the flow? My goal is definitely set at making that Olympic team and winning gold medal. That's my focus, and everything that we're doing is built around that, whether it be road racing. There's sort of, if that's the top of my Everest, shall we say, there's base camps along the way. So I want to, whether it be achieve a certain power in a certain timed effort or a standing start, or whether I want to do well in a particular road race that I know I can do well in, but road racing is sort of used as for us a way of training. Training sort of gets a bit mundane and boring when you're doing 6 hours every day. So it's much better to race, and you try a lot harder. So that's what we use sort of road racing for. It's just a much easier way to train, a much more enjoyable way to get the best out of ourselves. So you were part of the Team Pursuit team, which took gold at the World Championships. What was that like in 2012? Yeah, it was. I can't remember that. It's so long ago now. I remember, obviously, it was great beating the Aussies on their home turf. Obviously, that was my first senior world title, which was fantastic. Obviously, it was followed by disappointment in London, sort of 4 or 5 months later. But I'll still remember that world title, and no one can take that away from me. So that's great, and it was a fantastic achievement. I'd won a world's medal individually in 2005 in the IP. We got a silver in the team pursuit. So it was, and we got lots of silver and bronzes in the team pursuit at senior level. So it's nice to get a rainbow jersey, and hopefully we can win it this year in London. That'd be quite nice. Yeah, that would be fantastic. You've got so many accolades. Is that the highlight, the one in 2012, or is there anything which is particularly close to your heart as well? No, I think a world title always will be other than the Olympics, I think it'll still be the biggest thing. Commonwealth Games is a weird one. For some sports, it's easier to win a Commonwealth Games title than it is, a Europeans title, etc. Whereas for us, it's harder to win a Commonwealth Games title than a Europeans title, because it's got New Zealand and Australia, which are the best two team pursuit nations, should I say. So that silver medal there is a good one. Obviously, I'd much rather it be gold, that's for certain. But I think the World Championships, you've got the best teams there, and 2012, in Melbourne, the same teams basically rode for that World Championships that rode in the Olympics. So it's the same field. It's just a different competition. So the World Championships still figure the highest, shall I say, in my accolades.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Good chat so far with Andy. I'm just going to take a moment to pause the conversation. Okay, that I don't know what that noise was. That was supposed to be me putting the brakes on, I guess, but never mind. Let's move on from that. Let's forget that even happened. But we're going to take a break anyway from Andy Tennant right now. I just wanted to tell you how you can get in touch with me. You can do that at Richard_Parr, or go to my website, www.richardparr.net. I'd really like to hear your feedback on the show, who you'd like to hear from, because crucially, this is your show. If there's any particular aspect of some of these athletes you want to know more of, please let me know. It could be more of their routine. It could be how they got first interested into the sport. It could be nutrition. It could even be what they wear. What's the difference in their footwear? What's the difference in their clothing? Please let me know your thoughts on what you want to hear from some of the best athletes in the world. That's at Richard_Parr on Twitter, and www.richardparr.net is the website for all of the details. And I just want to remind you that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/best. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Anyway, forgetting players, let's go back to athletes and let's go back to Andy Tennant. He's up next.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
When did you get interested in cycling? Where did this love of sport begin?
I was a fat kid as 14, 15. I liked sweets and cakes and stuff, and I just went down to the local club with my mate who was into sort of trials biking, and there was a Wolverhampton Wheelers had an exhibition at the local leisure village, Aldersley Leisure Stadium. I think it could be called Aldersley Leisure Village. But yeah, they had an exhibition then, and they had a little race that day. So we did that, and I was last, I think. And then the next day they had sort of a cafe run, which seduced me with the bacon sandwiches. So I did that, and then I sort of got a lot keener on that. But to be honest, until I was 16, I was absolutely useless. I'd do handicap races and get 5-lap head start and still finish and lose 10 laps and finish 5 laps down. And I had a heart operation around sort of 14, 15 years old. And then I sort of started getting good around sort of GCSE year last year. I sort of got second in the under-16 nationals and sort of was up there. And then
what changed there? What changed? How did you go from being the fat kid coming last to the guy second in the nationals? What were you doing differently?
I just started riding a bike more seriously. I had my friend John Murphy, his dad Rob, did a BC coaching award and started coaching me and his son. There was probably nothing really particularly specific about it, but I just did more bike riding. So I'd ride virtually every day doing something, and I think that that riding every day just made me better. And obviously I had some talent there, which sort of came through, shall we say. I lost quite a bit of weight, which always helps in cycling, that's for certain. And I just progressed, and I don't think there's any one thing. And then first year junior, I tried out for the Great Britain cycling team and hit and passed one of their times, but didn't get selected because they didn't know who I was. And then the next year I managed to blag my way back onto the trial process and blitz the time, and then onwards and upwards from there. I'd never won a national title and won a European or world title before I ever won a national title. So it was a bit of a weird way of doing it, really.
Do you think that's partly to do with genetics of what's the background in your family, or is it just because you became, when you decided to take it seriously, you were like, I'm so driven, this is what I'm going for, and that's what propelled you a bit more? I wouldn't say I'm as genetically gifted as some bike riders, that's for certain. I'm more dedicated than some bike riders, I'd say. So I'd say it's a mixture of the two. Obviously I have got some genetics that are helping me. Because naturally I'm better than some people, but I am, I do work hard at it. It doesn't come for free, that's for certain. I wish it did at times, but I couldn't really put my finger on what clicked and made the change. I think I just got more interested in it, and I'm quite competitive as a person anyway, and whatever I do, whether it be cycling or playing Monopoly with the family, I still want to win. So I think once I started getting good and started, tasting that success, I wanted a bit more of it, and I think that's what sort of pushed me on to keep trying. And I enjoyed it. It was especially around sort of when I started getting good. It was more sort of in those years when there were exams at school, so it was almost a bit of a stress relief going out for 2 hours on the bike, and I think it worked quite well. I wasn't good at football, so it was a way of getting out. Did it help with your studies at all? Everyone says healthy body, healthy mind, or were you just so focused on the cycling then that the school studies just disappeared, so to speak?
No, I did all right in my GCSEs. I got A stars, A's and B's, and then A levels didn't quite help so much. The teachers didn't understand. I remember there was a mess up with teachers and this, that and the other, and they wanted to add a new, to catch up on the work, they wanted to add a lesson in on like a Wednesday afternoon or something. And I was like, well, I can't do that because I'm training. And they didn't really understand at that time. And it happened to be the woman was like, well, what are you going to do with cycling? And then 6 years later, I met her after I won the world championships and stuff. And she apologized. She said,
yeah, I was wrong there telling you that you wouldn't make anything out of cycling. And so that was always an amusing fact for me. But yeah, I was on for sort of two A's and a B, and running into A levels in sort of chemistry, biology and geography. And then I ended up with BBC. I failed every last exam, but then I won a world title. So I wouldn't change it. The problem was I knew that I couldn't fail those exams in terms of I couldn't get lower than C's at my A levels. So no matter how badly I did, because I'd done so, I'd got built up enough points in the previous exams and stuff. So I was a bit sort of like, I'd lost all motivation. Before then, I was always quite happy revising and studying, and I'd always try my best in the exams. But by that point, I'd just had enough of it. I just couldn't be bothered with it any longer. By those final exams in the summer, and luckily I didn't have to go to university, which was quite good because at the time I didn't know what I wanted to do really. I was sort of just floating along, and I was only going to uni because it was sort of the done thing. And yeah, even if I went back to uni now, I still wouldn't know what I wanted to do. So
not sports nutrition or anything like that.
Well, that was where I was heading down, but it's hard to get a job. It's hard to get a job in anything at the moment, though, to be fair. So someone said to me the other day, it's not a bad job, is it? And I said, I'd much rather be a Formula One driver living in Monaco. And he said, well, if you're in the position you are now, is there anything else you'd rather be doing with the skills you've got? And I said, no, not really. I said, I'm very lucky and very gifted, and in a privileged position to do a lot of things that people would only dream of. People say they want to be professional cyclists, but when people actually realise how much time you are away and how many things you give up, they soon change their mind. But it's certainly an experience that I can take to the grave with me. That's for certain. No one can take that away.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd all like Lewis Hamilton's paycheck. That would be quite
exactly
nice.
Yeah. I'd quite happily ball around in a Formula One car if I had to.
Yes, it can be a tough life at times. So obviously, when it comes to cycling, people can take a bike and they can go cycle around the town or wherever. How do you go from doing that to being in a velodrome? Because for me, when I was a kid, I didn't have like a local velodrome I could just pop into. How do you then get access to that, and then how do you get good at that?
Yeah, no, there's quite a few sort of outdoor tracks. I started on outdoor tracks. There's loads in the Midlands where I came from. There's Oldesley, Halesowen. There's one in Stoke. There's actually surprisingly more than people know about. They're often with running tracks, and the local club's the best way to start. They quite often have sort of links to the velodromes, shall we say. And now, obviously, Britain, with the success that we're having more and more velodromes or indoor velodromes built. Obviously, you've got Glasgow, Manchester, Newport in Wales, you've got Derby now, and obviously London. And the best way to start is there's taster sessions. There's more and more kids there all the time. Schools go in Manchester all the time, and the best way to do it is to look into those taster sessions at one of those velodromes. London, I think you'll struggle a bit more, but sort of your Manchester, your Derby, and your Glasgow and your Newport are running sessions all the time. And the best way to do it is to look on their websites and go from there. And you can hire all the track bikes, hire everything that you need, and have a go on the track. Go on an outdoor track first, but it definitely doesn't. It doesn't compare to an indoor track. The banking's sort of 45 degrees at least on an indoor track, and it's a lot shorter. Whereas an outdoor track, it's sort of 20 degrees, and you build up a lot more speed a lot quicker, shall we say, on an indoor track. And the thrills you get, it's hard to explain. It's something that I think everyone should do. It's a bit like an Alton Towers ride the first time you go on it. So people are nervous trying. They ride on. You've got the concrete at the bottom. Then there's a slight bit of wood, which is at sort of 20 degrees, which they call the Côte d'Azur, and people start riding around that, and then you can see them going on and off the main track as they build more and more confidence, and then you get the odd person who just goes straight to the top, but not many people do that, I can assure you.
How many times did you crash in the early days?
You don't crash as much as you think when you get on like that. The crashes happen in races because obviously you're getting so close and you're all jostling around for position and want to all be basically in the same position. So you're fighting against 30 bike rides to be in the same position. It's the touch of wheels or the touch of handlebars and that type of thing. But most people who crash sort of, whenever there's a crash in front of you, you always go up the track. But when people panic, they go down the track, and that's only one way because everyone who's crashing is coming down as well. So that's the biggest thing I can tell people. Don't stop pedaling and always go up the track. They're the two things I can tell you to do.
And why did you choose track cycling in the end instead of road cycling?
I was naturally better at it, if I'm honest. I'm all right at road cycling, but my sort of strengths lie towards the team pursuit, and that's naturally what I'm better at. So I've sort of just fallen in that path, shall we say, more so than road racing.
And we mentioned coffee, we mentioned Breaking Bad. What do you do to relax when you don't want to think about cycling anymore?
Movies, Sky box sets. I watch a lot of them. Netflix, pretty much the same generic things that most 20-year-olds do, other than go out and get smashed every night. We go cinemas. It's not very exciting, really. Enjoy my food, so we go out for nice meals, whether it be me and my partner, or fiance, I should say. She'll go out and get in trouble otherwise. And whereas me and the lads, we've got 2 dogs, so I quite like walking them. I've got a mate who helped me train the one with puppy trainer called Damien in Wilmslow. And I'm good mates with him, so I go out with him sometimes, and he goes hawking with birds and stuff. So just pretty much random things. Other than that, it's just I spend a lot of time watching Sky box sets and Netflix.
What are your top 3 series right now?
I'm watching House of Cards at the moment.
Oh,
I didn't have Netflix before, so I'm sort of catching up on the Netflix series. Obviously, I think my favourite show is probably Game of Thrones on Sky. I don't think you can. That's
Superb,
pretty much
both of them up there for me.
Yeah, they're pretty good. I've never really got into Breaking Bad that much. Everyone said it raved on about it, but I keep trying to watch it, but
It's a bit like The Wire. You need to be a little bit more patient with it. You just kind of got to... Did you watch The Wire at all?
No, but that's one on my list, shall we say. And then I'm sort of halfway through Sons of Anarchy, but the problem is when you're so tired, you almost want to watch something that's a bit easy. So unfortunately, I have to admit to be watching Gossip Girl at some points in my life.
I've got a friend called Sohail Malik who'd get on very well with. Who's big Gossip Girl fan there. Yeah,
Gossip Girl and The OC and all these awful shows. So, I like Made in Chelsea and all this sort of just rubbish, but it's just so easy to watch. And when you're so tired, you just don't want to do anything else. So
House of Cards, you probably need a bit more energy for.
Yeah, exactly. So when I got a bit more energy, I've been watching a bit of that, and it's very good, gripping.
I'm very much looking forward to the new series of Game of Thrones. I went to Croatia in the summer, and it just felt like I was there. It was very exciting, amazing TV show. Andy, thanks a lot for coming on the show. Before you go, do you want to just tell any of our listeners how they can get in touch with you on Twitter or Instagram or on Facebook or anything like that, where your fans can keep across your hopeful success next year at Rio?
Yeah, I'm mainly on Twitter and Instagram. I don't really use Facebook a lot, to be fair. So Twitter, I'm at Tennanto, Tennanto. And then on Instagram, I'm Andy Tennant 38. They're the best ways of staying in touch with me and the boys in our little adventure around the world, shall we say.
Well, Andy, enjoy the rest of your time in Tenerife. Good luck for Rio. We'll be following you. And thanks for being the best in the world.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Boom. There we have it. Andy Tennant on the Best in the World with Richard Parr. Great chat with him. I think we can all agree we've learned a lot, particularly about nutrition, particularly about positions in the velodrome, and the sheer dedication you need to, as he says in the podcast, be a fat kid into a world champion athlete. And we'll have more world champions, more Olympic champions, more Paralympic champions on our future episodes. When can you download this podcast? Every Wednesday, of course. And in fact, do you know what would be even easier than downloading it every Wednesday? Why don't you just subscribe? When you go on your iTunes page, click that button which says subscribe. Then you don't have to worry about every time going to iTunes, pressing download, waiting a couple minutes for it to download correctly. Just subscribe. Then you wake up Wednesday morning, you go on that train, you go, how am I going to fill this journey? I know, I'll listen to the Best in the World with Richard Parr. But I didn't download it. But in fact I have, because I've subscribed. It's already there. I can listen to it. You don't have to listen to Beryl and Betty or Mark and Marcus chit-chatting away on the train, talking about how many beers and the curry they had last night. No one cares. What you should care about is what these world-class athletes do to get better so you can get better. Deal? Deal. Sounds like a good deal to me. So download, subscribe, and then maybe give me a rating. These ratings really help the show. We'll get more listeners, and with more listeners, we can get even more top athletes to learn from. And we'll be starting that next Wednesday on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. But for now, have a great week. I'll speak to you next Wednesday.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.